Allow me to introduce my dear, dear, dear friend. And you know, one of the things we're trying to do with the Her Story Summit is to share the stories of women who do not have a voice. Wanjiku has her voice. She just can't articulate her story. And her beautiful son, James, put together this PowerPoint so I could share her story. So she was born in Mombasa in Kenya. And throughout her years in high school, Wanjiku was very, very vocal. She was an advocate. This is here at the corner. She got involved in speech and drama and public speaking at a very early age and has used her voice to advocate for women's rights throughout Africa. This is Wanjiku with her mother and her grandmother when she was a little girl living in Kenya. And she grew up with her grandmother. Her grandmother was her best friend. Her mom had to go away and work. So for most of her formative life, she lived in a village in Kenya with her grandmother. This is Wanjiku on the extreme. I'm going to have to move you guys around. She's the one in the hat on the extreme right in high school with some of her friends. And life was just amazing. This is the time when she became an advocate and she started using the power of drama and plays. So Wanjiku and I grew up in two different countries. She was in Kenya, I was in Zimbabwe, but we had a passion for the same playwright. His name was Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And Ngugi is one of the most famous Kenyan writers who made me an author, because when I was 14, 15, I read one of his books and I could hear my voice in his writing. There's nothing like hearing another person who speaks your language articulate in English. So Ngugi wrote plays and books, and we studied them in high school. This is Wanjiku with her mom. She looks very much like her mother. And Wanjiku left her hometown and drove by car 9 hours to go to the city, to Mombasa, to look for work, and ended up being a COBOL programmer and went into the IT field at a very, very early age. So she is a first generation coder. And that's something else that Wanjiku and I share. My first job was also in computers. I am a first generation coder. We both coded in COBOL, in Pascal, in Fortran. Back in the day, Africa had this technology as well. This is now Wanjiku when she had her first child. I think she was about 21, 22. And this is little James. Wanjiku is the mother of one beautiful boy. And he's the young man who put all of this together so that his mother could be able to tell her story during this summit. There's Wanjiku and little James when he was a baby. He was a chubby, chubby, chubby little young man. Doesn't look anything like this right now. And I'll show you a picture of him at the very end. And Wanjiku got married to her husband. He is from the UK. And this is on her wedding day. I think this is her brother on the right, the day that she got married. Wanjiku then moved to London with her husband and her son, went through a separation, went through a divorce. The stress of that was very, very impactful. She ended up developing lupus and learning to live with it. That was the first time that she lost the ability to use the function of the left-hand side of her body. And she started having to use a cane. It impacted on her work as an IT worker. It impacted on her mobility. So she uses a cane to walk. This is my first visit to Kenya. I'm in these pictures somewhere. This was International Women's Day, I think 2008. And Wanjiku said to me, Gertrude, can you be the keynote speaker? I've organized this event. So I'm in there in the background holding this banner, visiting Kenya for the first time. And this was a visit that absolutely changed my life, because I had been to other parts of Africa, to the southern part of Africa. I got to go to Kenya, to Mombasa for the first time. And we not only had this event, but we visited a few institutions that again impacted on the way that I've been doing things for myself. I'll just go back to the previous slide because that slide is quite significant. While I was in Mombasa, Wanjiku said to me, Gertrude, there's a lot of things that we need to do to try and help the women in Kenya. Now, if you look carefully at the picture on the extreme right-hand side, with the Messiah woman dressed in all of her tribal beadwork, if you look at the shoes that the women are wearing, there is a significance to these shoes. In Kenya, there is a piece of legislation that has been left over in the colonial days, that if you are a woman walking in the city wearing those flip-flops or sandals or jandals, we call them in New Zealand, the shoes that have the straps, you can be thrown in prison for wearing sandals in public in the city. So what happens is sometimes a man can proposition a woman, especially policemen abuse their power, and women are thrown into prison for that. We went to an all-women's prison while I was there, and I sat with women who are serving 2-3 years sentences for wearing sandals in public and refusing to have sex with police officers. This is happening today, ladies. I'm not talking about a story of what happened in the past. It happens right now. And the bail to get out of prison is $25 US. And a lot of women do not have that kind of money, so they serve 2-year sentences in prison for that. We sat with women who were in prison for having an abortion. I remember having a conversation with 2 sisters. One of them had had an abortion and somebody reported them to the police, and they arrested both of those girls and they were in prison for 3 years because abortion is illegal in Kenya. So these are some of the activities that Wanjiku had been advocating for. But not only that, in the next slide is a very significant thing that Wanjiku managed to do. She was part of uncovering a huge atrocity by the British government, a cover-up for the Mau Mau rebellion. When Kenya got its independence, there was a group called the Mau Mau. They were political activists who were arrested, who were brutalized, who were tortured by the British government. And Wanjiku made it part of her life mission to uncover the atrocities of what had happened. And while this court case was going on, the stress of putting all of this together is what induced the pneumonia and the coma that resulted in Wanjiku's disability. So she was advocating for other people. She is just one of the most incredible women I have ever met. So she developed pneumonia and they had to put her in an induced coma. When she woke out of that coma, they discovered that she had had a stroke and she lost everything. Her ability to speak, her ability to walk, her ability to do anything. And the last 4 to 5 years have been extremely difficult for her to rebuild her health, to be able to get out of bed and walk, to be able to learn how to talk again. But the victory was that This case went to court, and these are some of the old men who were tortured and brutalized by the British standing outside the court while Wanjiku was in this coma. There she is being interviewed. She was putting other people's stories out into the public, and they eventually won that court case and were vindicated and given reparations by the British government. So the book that Wanjiku wants me to help her write will probably be called Pneumonia with a Side of Stroke. So this was put together by her son. And this is James, her beautiful son. He is now probably 22, 23 years old. And when Wanjiku got ill, he quit his job. He stopped doing everything to try and help his mother get back on her feet. After 3 years, he showed her how to communicate through a series of questions. So whenever I have conversations with Wanjiku, we have to be online. Normally she's got her iPad. Now she can type in a few words and I can decipher what she's trying to say. But it's a series of my asking her questions. And sometimes she'll say no when she means yes, because the only word that will come out of her mouth is yes or no. So I can never quite tell what she's trying to say. But we have conversations as often as we can. Sometimes we get online and we sing together. She's a musician. She used to have the most beautiful singing voice. And so we try and communicate and connect as often as we can. And since the summit started, she's been coming online every single day and listening to your stories because it gives her a source of inspiration as well. So change is inevitable. And the question is, how will the change that Wanjiku has experienced shape her new direction? So stay tuned, ladies. I do believe Wanjiku's story has only just begun, and there is a lot more that you're going to do with your life, my friend. Thank you for coming online every day and supporting us.